A 6-year-old boy walked up to a stranger and offered her a crown she never asked for. What happened next rewired every rule his father had ever lived by. This is the story that proves love does not knock. It walks in through the back door of a restaurant, wearing an apron. Some journeys do not begin with grand gestures. They begin with a child's honest voice cutting through a room full of noise, and one woman too tired to pretend she did not hear it. Kindly take a pause to subscribe, so you never miss a story that reminds you what it feels like to be truly seen.
If you can play the ancient harp, Dad will marry you,
The boy said when he encountered the black waitress. The restaurant was called the Gilded Crane, and on a Tuesday afternoon, it was packed with the kind of people who ordered sparkling water just to feel important. Tenna Warren was carrying 4 plates at once, a skill she had developed over 2 years of working double shifts, when the small voice stopped her cold. She turned around slowly. Standing in the middle of the restaurant floor, between 2 tables of very confused businessmen, was a Korean boy who could not have been older than 6. He was wearing a tiny white dress shirt, dark trousers, and shoes that looked like they belonged on a man twice his age. His hair was neatly parted. His eyes were large, serious, and absolutely certain. He was staring directly at Tenna. "Excuse me," she said. "The ancient harp," the boy repeated, louder this time, as if the problem was that she had not heard him properly. "There is one in our house. Nobody plays it. My grandmother said that whoever can play it is the one Dad should marry. So, can you play it?" Tenna blinked. She had been asked many strange questions in this job. A man once asked her if the soup was gluten-free for his cat. But this, "Sweetheart," she said carefully, setting the 4 plates down on the nearest table without looking, "where is your father?" "He is outside," the boy said simply. "He does not come inside restaurants. He says restaurants are where people pretend to like each other." One of the businessmen at the table coughed loudly. Tenna ignored him. "What is your name?" she asked, crouching down to the boy's level. "Rue," the boy said. "Kim Rue. I am 6 3/4. And you have kind eyes." "My grandmother also said kind eyes are important." Tenna Warren was 28 years old. She had grown up in a small town in the eastern part of a continent far from here, daughter of a schoolteacher father and a seamstress mother. She had moved to this city alone, with 2 suitcases and a plan that had not entirely worked out. She was smart, she was patient, and she had learned very early that the world did not always reward either of those things. She was also, and this was the part nobody in this restaurant knew, classically trained in music. Piano, mostly. But also, briefly, strings. She looked at Kim Rue. "Why me?" she asked. "There are a lot of people in this restaurant." Rue tilted his head and considered her with the terrifying confidence of a child who has not yet learned to second-guess himself. "Because you are the only one who stopped," he said. Outside the Gilded Crane, a black car sat at the curb. It was not flashy the way people expected power to look. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made other cars change lanes. Inside, Kim Jae-won was on the phone. He was 34 years old, and he had the kind of face that had never fully decided whether it wanted to look kind or dangerous. High cheekbones. A jaw that looked like it had been carved by someone with strong opinions. Eyes that were dark and still in a way that made people uncomfortable when they noticed he was watching them, which he almost always was. He came from the city of Suwon, a place with history and weight, and the Kim family name in that city was not just a name. It was a door. One that opened things and closed them. "The meeting is rescheduled," he said into the phone. His Korean was clipped and efficient. "Tell Prosecutor Baek that I know about the second account. That should remind him where his loyalties are." He ended the call. He looked at the restaurant door. Rue had been inside for 4 minutes. Jae-won had told him 3. He got out of the car. The door of the Gilded Crane opened, and the temperature in the room seemed to change. Not dramatically, not like in a film, but in that quiet way where people suddenly straightened in their chairs without knowing why. Jae-won stepped in and scanned the room in under 2 seconds. He found Rue immediately. His son was crouched on the floor, now apparently showing something on his small wrist to the black waitress, who was also crouched down, looking at whatever it was with genuine interest. He walked over. "Rue." His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Rue looked up.
Dad.
This is Tenna. She works here. I asked her about the harp. Jaewon's gaze moved to Tenna. She was standing now. She had straightened the moment she heard him approach, and she was looking at him with an expression he was not used to seeing. Not fear. Not fascination. Not the careful blankness people usually wore around him. She looked mildly exasperated, like a woman who had been having a normal Tuesday and was still trying to figure out exactly when it had stopped. I am so sorry, she said, and her voice was steady and clear. He came in on his own. I was trying to locate you. I know, Jaewon said. He looked at his son.
Rue.
We talked about wandering off. I did not wander, Rue said with great dignity. I had a purpose. Jaewon's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted slightly. He looked back at Tenna. He did not bother you? He told me your father's marriage requirements, Tenna said. So that was a lot of information very quickly. But no, he was not a bother. Jaewon studied her for a moment. It was not a rude look. It was more like the way a person reads something twice because they are not sure they understood it correctly the first time.
Can you, he said.
Tenna frowned. Can I what? Play the ancient harp. The question sat between them for a beat. Why does that matter?
Tenna asked.
It doesn't, Jaewon said. Then, and this was the part she would think about later, much later, alone in her apartment, a corner of his mouth did something that was not quite a smile but was adjacent to one. I'm asking out of curiosity. No, Tenna said, because that was the truth, and she had always been better at truth than at tactics. I cannot play the ancient harp. Rue made a small noise of disappointment. However, Tenna continued, mostly to the boy, I do play strings. So, if the question is whether I understand the instrument, I think I might. Rue looked at his father. Jaewon looked at Tenna.
We should go, he said.
He put a hand on Rue's shoulder.
Rue.
Apologize for interrupting her work. Sorry, Tenna, Rue said, not sounding sorry at all, for interrupting your work. It was very important, though. Tenna looked at the boy and felt something tug in her chest that she could not name yet. It was, she agreed. They left.
The door closed.
The restaurant noise returned to its normal level. One of the businessmen asked if they could please get their food now, because it had been 40 minutes. Tenna went back to work. She did not think about the man with the still, dark eyes. She thought about the boy who had said, You are the only one who stopped. 3 days later, a reservation appeared in the system under the name Kim. The restaurant manager, a nervous man named Gerald, came to find Tenna personally. Table 7, he said. They have requested you specifically. Tenna looked up from the bread basket she was refilling. Requested me? By name, Gerald said. He looked uncomfortable. I don't know how they knew your name. Tenna thought about a 6-year-old boy with a very good memory and a lot of confidence. I have an idea, she said. Kim Jaewon arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, which was the reservation time. He was alone. No Rue. No staff. No visible security, though Tenna had worked in enough establishments to know that visible security was not the only kind. He sat at table 7. He looked at the menu. When Tenna arrived, he looked up. You came back, she said. I made a reservation, he replied. You could have gone to a different restaurant. I could have, he agreed. He looked back at the menu. What do you recommend? Tenna listed 3 things. He ordered all 3. She started to leave. My son, he said, talks about you. She turned back. He told me you have kind eyes, Jaewon said. He also told me you explained to him what a rest note is in music. He has been walking around the house being quiet at random intervals and calling them rest notes. Tenna felt that same tug in her chest. He asked me why music has silence in it. I said silence is not empty. It is just the part where the music is resting. Jaewon was quiet for a moment. He does not connect with people easily, he said. It sounded like information he did not give out often. His mother, he stopped. Started again. He's been quiet for a long time. Since he was 4. Tenna did not ask the question that was sitting at the end of that sentence. She had learned that some silences were rest notes, not invitations. He connected just fine on Tuesday, she said carefully. He had a very clear objective. Something changed in Jae-won's face. It was small, the way light changes when a cloud shifts, not when it disappears entirely.
He did, he said.
Tenna nodded once, and went to put his order in. She told herself on the way to the kitchen that this was a customer. A regular interaction. A man who had come to a restaurant and ordered food. That was all. She told herself this 3 more times before the shift ended. He came back the following Tuesday. And the one after that. He always sat at table 7. He always arrived exactly on time. He always ordered whatever Tenna recommended without question. And each time, he told her one small thing about Rue, not in a deliberate way, not like a man building a case, but in the way of someone who had been carrying information alone for too long and was surprised to discover that saying it out loud made it lighter. He asked me this week why stars do not fall, Jae-won said on the 4th Tuesday. I told him gravity. He told me that was a sad answer. What would have been a good answer?
Tenna asked.
According to Rue, the correct answer is that stars have somewhere to be.
Tenna laughed.
It was a real laugh, not a customer service laugh, the kind that arrived before she could decide whether to release it. Jae-won looked at her the way people look at a sound they have not heard in a very long time and were not sure they would recognize. Like a man hearing a rest note end. He wants to bring the harp, he said. To show you. Tenna's laughter faded, but gently. The ancient harp? It was my mother's. She was a musician. She died when Rue was 3. He said it plainly, not performing sadness, not building to something. Just information. Rue has never shown interest in it before. He told me this week that he wants to learn, but only if you will teach him. Tenna stopped. Mr. Kim, I am a waitress. You told him you understand the instrument. I said I understand strings. That is not the same as... I know, Jae-won said. I am not asking you to commit to anything. I am telling you what he said. Because he paused. For the first time since she had known him, he looked like a man choosing his words with something other than precision. Because he has not asked for anything in 2 years. And I do not know how to say no to it. The restaurant hummed around them. Someone dropped a fork at table 12. Gerald hovered near the entrance doing his nervous thing. The world continued being exactly what it was. Tenna looked at Kim Jae-won. This man with the quiet car and the guarded eyes and the son who believed stars had somewhere to be, and she made a decision that had nothing to do with reason. Tell him I said yes, she said. What Tenna Warren did not know, on that 4th Tuesday evening, was that 2 men in a parked car across the street from the Gilded Crane had been watching the restaurant since 6:45. What she also did not know was that by the time she walked home that night, someone had already run her name through 3 separate databases. And what she absolutely could not have known was that the reason Kim Jae-won had chosen the Gilded Crane, of all the restaurants in the city, was not random. Nothing about Kim Jae-won was random. The stories worth holding on to are the ones that change you by the end. Stay close, because this one is only just beginning. He had chosen this restaurant because someone had told him it was the last place a very important piece of his past had been seen. And Tenna Warren, with her kind eyes and her knowledge of rest notes, had walked directly into the middle of a map she did not know she was standing on. The boy had called it fate. His father was beginning to think the boy might be right. But fate and danger often arrive through the same door. And the door was already open. The ancient harp arrived on a Saturday morning, wrapped in dark cloth and carried by a man with no expression. Tenna had given Jae-won her address, a decision she had replayed 17 times since making it, and at exactly 9 o'clock, a knock arrived at her door. She opened it expecting a car. What she found was a man she had never seen before, holding something tall and cloth-wrapped, and behind him, Rue Kim, already talking before she had fully registered that the door was open. I made sure they were careful, Rue announced, walking straight in as if he had been to her apartment before. I told the driver, this is grandmother's harp. You must carry it like it is a sleeping person. Tenna stepped aside. The man with the harp, who had still not changed his expression, set it gently against the wall and left without a word. Rue looked around her apartment with open curiosity. It was small and clean, with bookshelves that covered an entire wall, a second-hand keyboard in the corner, and a photograph above the kitchen table of a woman in a green dress standing in a field that looked very far away from here. Is that your mother? Rue asked, pointing at the photograph. Yes, Tenna said. She looks like someone who sings. She does sing, Tenna said. Every Sunday. For 30 years.
She paused.
Where is your father? Downstairs, Rue said. He does not do well in small spaces. Tenna looked at the apartment. It was not that small. Did he say that? Rue considered. He did not say that exactly. He said he had calls to make. But I think it is also the small space thing. He walked over to the wrapped harp and looked at it. Are you ready? She unwrapped it slowly. The harp was old in the way that certain things are old, not falling apart, not faded, but carrying time the way a river carries water. The wood was deep gold brown, carved with patterns she did not recognize, but somehow felt she should. The strings were there, all of them intact, catching the morning light through the window and holding it. Rue stood very still. This was the first time Tenna had seen him be fully still. It's beautiful, she said quietly. My grandmother played it at family events, Rue said. His voice had changed. It was the same voice but slower, like he was reading something from a place far inside him. Dad says she played it the night he was born. He says the sound came through the walls of the hospital room. Tenna looked at the boy. Do you remember her? She asked. A little. She smelled like ginger and paper. And she always held my face like this. He pressed both his small palms gently against his own cheeks and looked up at Tenna. Like I was something she needed to remember. Tenna's throat did a thing it had no business doing on a Saturday morning. She sat down on the floor in front of the harp. After a moment, Rue sat down beside her, cross-legged, completely at home on her floor, as if he had sat there 100 times. Can I try? He asked. Put your hand here, she said. She guided his small fingers to the strings, not showing him a technique yet, just letting him feel the tension. Now, very gently, like you're saying hello to something that has been asleep for a long time. Rue plucked one string. The sound rang out into the apartment. Clear and warm and aching, the way only old instruments can sound, like they remember everything they have ever been asked to play. Rue's eyes went wide. It answered, he whispered. It always answers, Tenna said. That's what instruments do. You speak to them, they speak back. She paused. Your grandmother understood that. Rue plucked another string. Then another. He was not playing music. He was having a conversation. From downstairs, Kim Jae-won stood beside his car with his phone in his hand and a call he had not yet made. He was looking up at the window of the third floor. He could not hear the harp, but he could see the light in it, and he could see the shadows of two people sitting together in the morning. He put the phone in his pocket. He stood there for a long time. The lessons became a Saturday thing. Not a formal arrangement, no contract, no payment, no schedule written down. Rue simply showed up every Saturday at 9 with the expectation of the harp, and Tenna found that she had started reorganizing her Saturday mornings around 9 o'clock in a way she did not examine too carefully. Jae-won never came up. Sometimes he sent a different driver. Sometimes he came himself and stayed outside. Twice, Tenna brought down a cup of tea without being asked and left it on the hood of the car. The first time, he looked at her with the expression of a man who had been given something he did not know how to categorize. The second time, he said thank you, 2 words, but he said them like they had weight. They were not building a friendship. Tenna knew what a friendship looked like, easy and chatty, and full of history. This was something else. Something that was assembled in the spaces between things. A cup of tea, a look, a sentence set out of order with no explanation. Rue told me you play piano, Jae-won said on the third Saturday, standing beside his car while Tenna had stepped out to get air between the morning session and the afternoon one. He talks about me, she asked. Constantly, Jae-won said. He looked like he was still deciding how he felt about that. I played from age 5 to age 22, Tenna said. Piano and some strings. I wanted to study music professionally. My parents were, she stopped. They had other ideas. So, you became a waitress. I became a waitress temporarily, Tenna said. On my way to something else. I've been temporarily a waitress for 2 years. He looked at her. What is this something else? I compose, she said. I write music. I've been trying to get a piece placed with an ensemble here in the city. She did not usually say this to people. She said it now, and it felt strange in the air. It's slow. How long have you been working on it? The main piece? 14 months. Jaewon was quiet for a moment. Can I hear it? The question was simple. There was nothing behind it that she could see. And yet it landed on her like something significant, because nobody, not once, in 14 months, had asked to hear it. It's not finished, she said. I know. Can I hear it anyway? She looked at him for a long moment. He was leaning against the car, arms not quite crossed, looking at her with those still eyes that she had stopped finding unsettling about 3 Tuesdays ago. Next Saturday, she said. He nodded. Next Saturday never arrived the way it was supposed to. Because on Friday night, Tena's restaurant was visited by 2 men who were not there to eat. She noticed them immediately. There was something about the way they sat that was wrong. Too still. Too watchful. They ordered nothing for 20 minutes and watched the room in the systematic way of people who have been trained to do it. When she approached their table, the taller one looked at her with a smile that did not reach anything above his chin. Tena Warren, he said. She did not ask how he knew her name. She had learned enough in the past weeks to understand that some people introduce themselves with information they should not have, as a demonstration. Can I take your order? She said. We are friends of Mr. Kim, the shorter one said. We wanted to say hello to someone he has been spending time near. Mr. Kim is a customer, Tena said. He comes in on Tuesdays. And Saturdays, the tall one said pleasantly. At your apartment. With his son. Very touching, actually. The restaurant buzzed around them. Gerald was at the front. 3 other tables needed attention. Tena's face did not change. I'll give you a moment with the menu, she said, and walked away with the same pace she always used. In the kitchen, she stood by the counter for 10 seconds and thought very carefully. Then she took out her phone and typed a message to the only Kim contact she had. The number Rue had made her save, on the second Saturday, by announcing that he was adding his father's number to her phone for emergencies. 2 men, at the restaurant. They said they're your friends. One tall, one shorter. They know about the Saturdays. She put her phone back and went to table 4 with their appetizers. By the time she returned to the 2 men's table, they were gone. No payment, no note. As if they had never been there. Her phone buzzed. Don't go home tonight. I am sending someone. She went home anyway. Not because she was being careless, but because Tena Warren had not survived 2 years alone in a city that had not been particularly kind to her by being the kind of person who let fear make her decisions. She went home. She double-locked the door. She sat at her keyboard and played scales until her heartbeat settled, and she waited. The knock came at 10:40. She opened the door on the chain. Jaewon stood in the hallway. He was not in his usual controlled state. His tie was gone. His jacket was open. He had the look of a man who had driven fast. You went home, he said. I live here, she said. I told you not to. You're not my employer, she said. And those men were trying to frighten me. Going home is the opposite of letting them win. She paused. Would you like to come in? He stood in the hallway for a moment, and she could see him recalibrating. Something had been prepared in him, a speech or a strategy, and her calm had knocked it sideways. Yes, he said. She let him in. He looked around her apartment the way Rue had on the first day, not nosily but carefully. The harp was still against the wall. The keyboard was in the corner. The photograph of her mother was above the kitchen table. Those men, Tena said, putting the kettle on without asking, are they dangerous? To me, Jaewon said. Not to you. Not directly. But they came to where I work. Yes. He sat down at the kitchen table. He looked tired in a way that was different from regular tired, the way a person looks when they have been managing something heavy for so long that their posture has started to show it. There is a man named Shin. He runs operations in this region that overlap with things my family manages. He has been looking for a way to destabilize me. Coming near someone he stopped. Started differently. Coming near people I have contact with is a pressure tactic. Someone you what? Tenna said, setting a mug in front of him. He looked at the mug, then at her. Someone I trust, he said carefully. The word sat between them. You've known me for 6 weeks, Tenna said. I know, Jaewon said. That is not enough time to trust someone. I know that too, he said. And yet here I am, at 10:40 on a Friday, drinking tea at your kitchen table because you were too stubborn to go somewhere safe. He picked up the mug. My son told me last week that you are the bravest person he has ever met. I told him he was 6 and had not met very many people. He told me that was not the point.
Tenna looked at him.
What is the point? She asked. According to Rue, Jaewon said, the point is that you always stop. When other people walk past things, you stop. He said that is what brave means. The kettle finished its business in the kitchen. The city made its nighttime sounds outside the window. The harp stood against the wall, carrying its long memory. Tenna sat down across from him. Tell me about Shin, she said. He told her. Not everything. She understood that there were rooms in what he told her that had locked doors. But enough. Shin was a man who had come into the region 3 years ago with money that had unclear origins and ambitions that were extremely clear. He had spent 2 years building alliances and 1 year burning them when he realized Jaewon's network was stronger than he had calculated. The tactics had escalated. The pressure was increasing. And Rue?
Tenna asked.
Jaewon's jaw did a small, almost invisible thing. Rue does not know the full picture. He knows his father has complicated work. He knows we have security. He knows not to tell strangers our address. A pause. He told you our address on day 1. He did, Tenna said. He also told me your car model and what you eat for breakfast. Of course he did. Jaewon looked at the photograph on the wall. His mother, her name was Soo-yeon. She died when Rue was 4. Not an illness. An accident that.
He stopped.
That may not have been an accident. The room went quiet in a different way than it had been quiet before. You think Shin? I think many things, Jaewon said. I have thought them for 2 years. I have no proof. And a man like Shin knows how to make sure proof does not exist. Tenna absorbed this. She thought about the boy who pressed his palms to his own face and said like I was something she needed to remember. She thought about him plucking harp strings and whispering it answered. He is trying to heal, she said. Rue. Yes, Jaewon said. And you? He looked at her. It was a long look, the kind that happens when someone is deciding whether to let a question land or deflect it. I have not thought about that, he said. For a long time, I did not think it was an available option. The honesty of it knocked her back slightly. Not because it was dramatic, it wasn't. It was quiet. It was the kind of honest that a person offers when they have stopped being careful for just one moment. It is available, Tenna said. It is always available. He did not say anything to that. But he did not leave until almost midnight, and by the time he did, they had talked about his mother, her mother, the city of Suwon in the fall, what a rest note means in a life, and exactly how Rue had managed to get the harp carried up to her apartment in under 40 minutes. At the door, Jaewon turned. Saturday, he said. I would still like to hear the piece. It is still not finished, Tenna said. I know, he said. And there was that almost smile again, barely there, like a note at the edge of hearing. I'll listen to whatever you have. She closed the door after him and stood in the hallway of her small apartment, completely still, listening to the city outside and the silence inside. The rest note that sits between one thing ending and something else beginning. And she did not know, not yet, that 3 floors below, Shin's man had been watching the building entrance and had just taken a photograph and sent it somewhere. Every story has a moment where the road splits. You are standing at that split right now. And the someone it was sent to was not Shin. The photograph arrived in an envelope. Not electronically, an actual physical envelope, left on the kitchen table of Jaewon's main residence, while he was at Tenna's apartment. Which meant someone had been inside. Which meant the message was not just the photograph. The message was, we can reach you anywhere. His head of security, a man named Pak Chun-seo who had been with the Kim family for 11 years, was waiting when Jaewon returned home at midnight. Chun-seo was not a man who showed alarm. He showed it now. The perimeter was clean, Chun-seo said. No forced entry. No trip sensors. Whoever this was, they were inside before the security was active. Jaewon looked at the photograph. It showed him at the entrance to Tena's building. Arriving. The timestamp said 10:42 p.m. 13 minutes after he had gotten her text. Inside job, Jaewon said. Chun Seo said nothing. Because silence from Chun Seo always meant yes. Jaewon looked at the photograph for a long time. He was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about the harp against the wall. He was thinking about Rue walking into a restaurant and coming home with a new person in his life who had filled a space that had been empty for 2 years. He was thinking about Tena, who had gone home anyway because she refused to be afraid. I need the leak found, he said. Tonight. It will cost time, Chun Seo said. Then it will cost time. He set the photograph down on the table and went to check on Rue. His son was asleep, small and certain, even unconscious, with one arm flung over a drawing he had been working on. Jaewon moved closer to see it. It was a picture of a harp, drawn in blue crayon, slightly lopsided, with enormous strings and, in the corner, 2 small figures sitting in front of it. One taller, one shorter. The taller one had curly hair and was drawn in brown. Underneath, in Rue's careful 6-year-old handwriting, rest note. Jaewon stood in his son's room for a very long time. He did not tell Tena about the photograph on Saturday. He told himself it was because there was no reason to alarm her when he did not have all the information yet. He told himself the situation was being managed. He told himself she was safer not knowing the full picture. These were all partly true. The part that was not true was that he also, and this was new and inconvenient and arrived without permission, did not want to change what Saturday had become. He did not want to convert it into a threat briefing. He did not want to see her face shift from whatever it was now into the careful, guarded thing that people's faces became when they understood the full scope of Kim Jaewon's world. Rue did not have these complications. Rue arrived at 9 o'clock, immediately asked Tena if she had practiced since last week, and was satisfied with her answer, which was, every morning. Every morning? Rue said, impressed. It keeps your fingers awake, Tena said. My fingers are very sleepy, Rue said. That is the problem. The lesson ran for an hour. Rue was getting better in the slow, honest way that children get better at things. Not a smooth curve, but a series of stubborn improvements interrupted by spectacular regressions. He was learning to feel the strings rather than just pluck them. He was learning that the gap between notes was as important as the notes. After Rue went to sit at the kitchen table with a book he had brought, a picture book about deep-sea creatures, which he consulted with the intensity of a researcher, Tena sat down at her keyboard. Jaewon had come up this time. He was sitting in the chair she had placed in front of the keyboard, hands on his knees, watching her the way he watched most things. Quietly and completely. It does not have a name yet, she said. That's fine, he said. She played. It was 10 minutes long. It started with a left-hand pattern that was not quite a waltz, 2 irregular, 2 searching, and then the right hand arrived, not with a melody exactly, but with something that kept reaching toward one without landing. There was a section in the middle that was very fast, and then became very slow in a way that felt like grief. And then, at the end, the melody arrived at last, not triumphant, not resolved, just present. Just there. When she finished, the apartment was perfectly quiet. Rue had put his book down. Jaewon had not moved. What is it about? He asked. Tena had never answered that question out loud before. She had answered it in music every time she played it, but the words had stayed closed. My mother called me 2 years ago, she said. She said, you've been away for 3 years. Come home. And I said, I will come home when I have something to show. When the something else is real. She looked at the keyboard. And then I came here, instead of going home. And I have been here for 2 years still trying to make the something else real. And she has not pushed. She has not said, why are you still there? She just calls every Sunday and sings. She stopped. The piece is about that, she said. About someone waiting patiently for you in the place you left, and you not being able to go back until you have become what you left to become. And also about how maybe that is not as noble as it sounds. Maybe it is just stubbornness dressed up as ambition. The room held this. Rui said from the kitchen table. I think you should go home soon, even without the something else. Jae-won looked at his son. Thank you, Rui, Tenna said quietly. I am just saying, Rui said, and went back to his deep-sea creatures. Jae-won looked at Tenna. It is extraordinary, he said. The peace. You do not need to say that. I don't, he agreed. I am saying it because it is true, and because I think you know it is true and are afraid to believe it. He paused. I know what that particular fear looks like. It lives in the face. She looked at him. What do you want? He asked. Not the general something else. Specifically. If you had what you needed, what would it look like? She told him. She had not told anyone. She told him anyway. A piece performed by a real ensemble, recorded, attributed to her name. Not as a career claim, just as a proof. A thing that existed in the world that said, she was here and she made this. He nodded slowly. I know someone, he said. I don't want, she stopped. Started again. I am not asking you to. I know you are not asking, he said. I am offering. There is a difference. His voice was even. Certain. I know the director of the Harem Ensemble. They are performing a new works program in the spring. The deadline for submissions is in 3 weeks. Tenna stared at him. You would not get the performance because of me, he said. I would get you the hearing. What happens after that is the music's job. She was quiet for a long time. Why? She said. Because, he said, and this time the words came out less smoothly, like they had to be pulled from somewhere that did not usually offer them. You stopped. When everyone else walked past. You stopped and you listened to my son and you gave him back something I did not know how to give him. He looked at the harp against the wall. This is not a transaction. I am trying to tell you that some things cannot be repaid, and I have spent my entire adult life believing everything has a price, and he stopped. Finding out that I was wrong about that. Tenna was very still. Send me the submission details, she said at last. He sent them before he left. What came next happened fast. The leak in J1 security was identified on Sunday evening. It was not someone from the inner circle. It was a maintenance contractor who had been placed by Shin's organization 11 months ago, quiet and patient and invisible until he was useful. Chun Seo removed the problem with the kind of efficiency that Jae-won's family had always maintained. Not violently, but absolutely. The man was gone, and Shin knew he was gone, and the message underneath that was, we found it. We closed it. You are not as inside as you thought. But Shin did not respond the way Jae-won expected. Shin went quiet. And Chun Seo, who had been in this world long enough to read silence like other people read language, came to Jae-won on Monday morning with a look that Jae-won had only seen on him twice before. He is not pulling back, Chun Seo said. He is repositioning. Toward what? Jae-won said. We do not know yet. But there is movement in 3 locations. And Chun Seo paused. The pause of a careful man who has something to say that he wishes he did not have to say. There is a name that has appeared twice in communications we intercepted. Not yours. Not mine. Jae-won looked at him. Warren, Chun Seo said. The name arrived in the room like something dropped from a great height. Tenna did not know any of this on Monday. On Monday, Tenna was at work, and she was thinking about the submission deadline, and she was also thinking, in the behind-thoughts way, the way music plays underneath other things, about the look on Jae-won's face when he said you stopped. Gerald came to find her at 11 a.m. with the expression of a man who is in well over his depth. There is a gentleman asking for you, he said. Not a customer. He says he has a message. Tenna came out front. The man standing at the entrance was not tall or remarkable looking. He was middle-aged, wearing a raincoat, and he had the careful stillness of someone who had decided before arriving exactly what he was going to say. Miss Warren, he said pleasantly, I represent someone who would like to speak with you. About Kim Jae-won. I do not know who that is, Tenna said. Everyone says that at first. The man said, still pleasant. But we both know you do. He comes in on Tuesdays. You bring him tea on Saturdays. His son is learning the harp in your apartment. The pleasant expression did not change. We are not here to hurt you. We are here to offer you something. I am working, Tenna said. You should leave. We know about the harem ensemble submission, the man said. Tenna's face did not change. She had practice at that. What we want is simple, he said. Just information. Small things. Movement, schedules, occasional details. In exchange, he took a card from his pocket and set it on the counter between them. The submission gets placed. Guaranteed. Top of the program. He left the card and walked out. Tenna stood at the counter and looked at the card for exactly 4 seconds. Then she picked it up, went to the back, and called J1. He picked up on the second ring. I need to tell you something, she said. He arrived in 18 minutes. Alone. He sat in the kitchen of the empty back room. Gerald had been persuaded to give them the space without being told why, and he listened to Tenna tell him everything. The man, the message, the card, the offer. When she finished, he did not say anything right away. The submission, he said at last. Was that why you? No, Tenna said, and her voice was clear and sharp. I called you because someone just tried to make me a tool against you, and I am not a tool, and I thought you should know. Those two things are completely separate. He looked at her for a long moment. I know, he said. I know they are. I'm sorry It was a fair thing to wonder, she said. They sat across from each other in the empty back room of the Gilded Crane, and the whole weight of everything, the harp, the boy, the music, the photograph, the leak, the man with the card, settled around them like weather. Tenna, he said, and it was the first time he had used her name without her title, and they both heard it. I need to move away. Somewhere safer, outside the city, for a short time, while I manage this. Okay, she said. And he stopped. I don't have the right to ask this. Ask it, she said. I need to know that you are somewhere I know about. Somewhere with security. Not because I am asking you to, he was struggling. This was a man who was not accustomed to struggling with sentences. I am not asking you to be part of this world. I am asking you to let me make sure you are safe while I end a situation that I brought, whether I meant to or not, to your door. You did not bring it, Tenna said. A 6-year-old boy brought it. By walking into this restaurant and being exactly who he is. Jaewon's face did something complicated. I will figure out accommodations, he said quietly. I have accommodations, Tenna said. I live in my apartment. Tenna. I am telling you, she said, that I am not running. But I will tell you if you find out anything about where Shin is or what he is planning, you tell me. No managing the information for my sake. No deciding what I need to know. You tell me. He was quiet. Agreed, she said. Agreed, he said. She nodded once. Also, she said, standing, I am going to submit the piece to the harem ensemble regardless of all of this. On my own. Without anyone's connections. Because that is the only way it counts. He looked up at her. I know, he said. I was going to tell you that too. She believed him. She was not sure when she had started being certain of what he would and would not do. But she was certain. That certainty would be tested sooner than she thought. Because what neither of them knew, what Chun Seo had not yet been able to verify, was that the man who had visited Tenna was not working for Shin. He was working for someone else entirely. Someone who had been watching Jaewon's life for not 3 years, but 11. Someone whose name, when it arrived, would change everything Jaewon thought he understood about his wife's death. 11 years. That was the number that Chun Seo wrote on the paper he placed in front of Jaewon 2 days later. Not Shin. Not a new enemy. An old one. Older than the business. Older than the city. Older than Suyun. The name at the top of the paper was Lim Dongcheol. Jaewon had not heard that name in 11 years because he had believed, for 11 years, that Lim Dongcheol was dead. He was not dead. He was 71 years old. He had spent a decade in a country that did not ask his name. He had rebuilt in silence with a patience that was almost supernatural, and he was Jaewon's father's oldest enemy. A man who had once lost everything to the Kim family in a conflict that Jaewon had been a teenager during and had never been told the full story of. Shin was not the architect. Shin was a contractor. The job, the real job, was Lim's. And the target was not Jaewon's operations, or his alliances, or his network. The target was the truth about Soo-yun. Chun Seo laid it out carefully because Chun Seo was a man who understood that information like this had to be placed, not thrown. Soo-yun's accident, the car, the road, the night 4 years ago had been arranged. That part Jae-won had suspected. What he had not known, what Lim had been spending 11 years ensuring would never surface, was why. Soo-yun had found something. In the months before she died, she had been quietly investigating a discrepancy in documents connected to the original conflict between Jae-won's father and Lim, a discrepancy that, if it became known, would reveal that the Kim family's rise had not been as clean as the family believed. That Jae-won's father had known about something and chosen silence. That the Kim name had a floor underneath it that nobody was supposed to look at. She had been compiling evidence. She had never gotten to use it. And Lim had spent the last 4 years watching Jae-won. Not to destroy him, but to make sure the evidence died with Soo-yun. As long as no one else found it, as long as Jae-won remained in the dark, the floor stayed hidden. But then a young woman started spending time with the Kim son, in a small apartment with a harp and a keyboard, and Lim began to wonder what Soo-yun might have told her husband before the accident, and whether a man recently softened by proximity to kindness might start looking at things he had previously avoided. The man with the card was not a recruiter.
He was a test.
To see if Tenna knew anything. To see if she had been told anything. To see if she was a threat. Jae-won read Chun Seo's report twice. He sat at his desk for 45 minutes. Then, he went to find the box. It had been in storage since Soo-yun's death, not because he had forgotten it, but because opening it had felt like a door he was not ready to walk through. He had told himself it was grief. He understood now it had also been on some level a choice not to know. Because knowing meant deciding. And deciding meant moving. And he had been standing still for 4 years, frozen at the edge of a truth he had felt but never touched. The box was small. It had her handwriting on the outside, and he allowed himself exactly 3 seconds with that before he opened it. Inside, a notebook.
A drive.
3 photographs. And a letter addressed to him. He did not read the letter that night. He could not. What he did instead was call Tenna. It was 9 in the evening. She answered on the 3rd ring. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Not about a threat. Just something."
"Okay," she said.
"I found out today that my wife was more than I knew she was," he said. "That is not the right way to say it. I knew who she was. I did not know what she had been doing. She was trying to do something right. Something that cost her everything. And I did not know, and I have been angry for 4 years at something with no face, and now it has a face, and I..."
He stopped.
"I don't know what to do with it," he said.
"Yet.
"I will figure out what to do with it. But I needed to say it out loud to someone, and you are..." He stopped again. "You are the person I wanted to say it to." The phone was quiet for a moment. "I'm here," Tenna said. Simply. Not trying to fix it, not filling the silence with things that would not help. Just, "I'm here." He exhaled. "Thank you," he said. They stayed on the phone without speaking for almost 10 minutes. She played a few notes on her keyboard, not the piece, just something quiet and formless, the kind of thing you play when someone needs sound rather than silence. He listened. Eventually she said, "Rue is going to want to know why Saturdays changed." "I know," he said. "Saturdays are not going to change." "Good," she said. He went to sleep that night for the first time in 4 years without the particular weight on his chest that had lived there since the car, the road, the night. It was not gone. It would not be gone for a long time. But it was different. And different after 4 years of the same was everything. On Wednesday, Tenna received a response from the Harem Ensemble. She had submitted the piece alone, exactly as she had said she would. No connections, no endorsements, just her name and the music and the 12-page score she had spent 14 months writing. She had stayed up until 2 a.m. to finish the final section, the one that had been sitting open-ended for months, and in finishing it she had understood that it had been waiting for something to resolve in her before it could resolve in the music. The ending, when it came, was not triumphant. It was clear. It was simple. It said, "I am still here. And that is enough." The email said, "We are pleased to invite you for a live audition. Please bring a complete score and be prepared to discuss the compositional process." She sat at her kitchen table for a long time. Then she called her mother. Her mother picked up and said, "Tenna," in the way mothers say their children's names, with a whole history in 2 syllables. "Mama," Tenna said, "I think that something else might be happening." Her mother said nothing for a moment. Then she started to sing, not a full song, just a few bars of something old and warm, the kind of music that does not have an occasion, because it is its own occasion. Tenna listened. The harp caught the light from the window. She did not tell J1 about the audition that week. Not because she was hiding it, but because something in her needed to hold it alone for a few days, to turn it over in her hands without any other voices in the room. She had lived with this particular hope for so long, and in such privacy, that sharing it prematurely felt like opening a door before a house was ready for weather. But Rue found out. On Saturday morning, he arrived and immediately noticed she was different. "You look like someone who has good news," he announced. "I look exactly like I always look," Tenna said. "No," Rue said, with the absolute confidence of a child who does not yet know he is supposed to pretend not to notice things. "You look like you know something. Your eyes are doing a thing." "What thing?" "The thing they do," he said, as if this explained everything. "Dad's eyes do it sometimes too now. They did not used to." J1, who had come up this time, said nothing, but the back of his neck did a very slight thing. "What does it look like?" Tenna asked Rue. Rue thought very hard. "Like the note before the note," he said. "Like when you are about to play, but you have not played yet. Like it is about to be real." Tenna looked at J1. J1 looked at Tenna. "I got the audition," she said. The room was quiet for 1 second. Then Rue made a sound that could only be described as a triumphant 6-year-old sound and threw both arms in the air and announced, to no one in particular, "I knew it. The harp did it. The harp called the music." J1 stood up from his chair. He did not say anything for a moment. He was looking at her with an expression she had never seen on him before, not the controlled, careful, quiet look that was his default. Something wider than that. Something that had not been given permission and arrived anyway.
"Tenna," he said.
"It is just an audition," she said quickly. "I know what it is," he said. He crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. He was not close enough to be alarming, but close enough that she was aware of exactly how much presence a person could carry without moving. Close enough that she could see very clearly that his face was doing the thing Rue had tried to describe, like the note before the note. "You did this," he said.
"Alone."
"Exactly, as you said you would." "Yes," she said. "I am," he stopped. The words were doing that thing again, where they needed to be pulled. "I am very proud of you." "Is that—" He seemed uncertain whether that was the right thing to say. "Is that a strange thing to say?" "A little," she said. "But I don't mind it." He exhaled. And then Rue, who had been watching all of this from the floor where he had sat down to begin the day's harp session, said very quietly, "This is a rest note." They both looked at him. He was plucking one string, slowly, looking not at them, but at the harp. "In the middle," he said. "Like you said, Tenna. The part where the music is resting before the next big thing." The apartment held them all. The woman, the man, the boy, the harp, the morning light, and the music that was still becoming. 3 hours later, everything fell apart. Chun Seo called. His voice, for the first time in 11 years, was not controlled. Lim Dongcheol had made his move. Not against J1. Not against operations or alliances or networks. He had gone to the harem ensemble. By the time the call ended, Tenna had received an email. Politely worded. Formally structured. The audition, it said, had been placed on hold due to an administrative review of the new works program. She would be contacted when the review was complete. No timeline given. She read it twice. She did not cry. She did not break anything. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface and she breathed, in, out, and she was very, very still. When she looked up, J1 was standing in the kitchen doorway. He had seen the email notification on her face before she had said a word. "He got to them," Tenna said. "Yes," J1 said. "Because of you. Because of me." The silence between them was not the rest note kind. It was the kind that comes when something true has been said, and there is no making it smaller. Tenna stood up. How does this end, she said. With Lim. What does it take? The evidence, Soo-yeon gathered, he said. If it surfaces, if what she found becomes known, Lim's leverage disappears. He has spent 11 years protecting one secret. Without it, he is just an old man a long way from home. Do you have the evidence? The notebook and the drive from the box, he said. I spent this week going through them. It is, what she found was significant. It is enough.
He paused.
But getting it to someone who can make it matter, without Lim's people intercepting it, is. How much time do we have?
Tenna said.
Days, he said. Not weeks. He is moving fast now because he is not trying to contain anymore. He has decided to end this. Tenna nodded. Then we do not wait, she said. Jae-won looked at her. This woman with the keyboard in the corner, and the photograph above the table, and the piece that had taken 14 months, and the eyes that stopped when other people walked past.
He said.
You told me you would not manage information for my sake, she said. I told you I was not running. She picked up her phone. So we do not wait. What do we do first? From the other room, very quietly, Rue was still playing the harp. One note. Then another. The space between them exact and patient. A rest note before the thing that changes everything. The drive and the notebook. That was what it came down to. Everything. Lim's 11 years of careful silence, Soo-yeon's lost work, the harem ensemble, the harp, Rue's slow healing, for years of a grief without a face. All of it pointed to those two things and what Jae-won did with them. He had spent the week going through the notebook page by page. Soo-yeon's handwriting was small and precise, the writing of someone who had been taught to be thorough. She had documented everything with the patience of a woman who knew she was working against time she might not have. Dates. Transfers. Names. A chain of decisions made in the years before Jae-won was born, when his father and Lim had been young men building their respective worlds out of the same raw materials, and when one had taken from the other in a way that was dressed up as business but was, underneath, something more personal and less forgivable. The Kim family's founding wealth, the first major acquisition, the one that had made everything else possible, had come from a collapse that Lim had not fallen into by accident. Jae-won's father had known about a coming crisis in Lim's primary holding, had received the information from a shared contact, and instead of warning Lim, had positioned to benefit from the fall. It was not illegal in any technical sense. It was the kind of thing that happened in that world, and was never spoken about. But to Lim, who had trusted Jae-won's father as a partner, genuinely trusted him, the way men who build things together sometimes do, it had been a betrayal that rewrote everything he had understood about his own life. And Soo-yeon had found the correspondence. The actual letters. Scanned and documented and cross-referenced with financial records. She had not been planning to use them to destroy the Kim family. She had been planning to use them to give Lim, then already an old man in self-imposed exile, the acknowledgement he had spent his whole life waiting for. A truth told to him privately, by the family that owed it. Not justice, exactly. Something harder to name, and maybe more important. Jae-won read this part of the notebook 3 times. His wife had been trying to do something right, and she had been killed for it. He told Tenna all of this in the early morning hours of Thursday, at the kitchen table where they had sat on that first late Friday night, when he had come to find her after she went home anyway. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat with it for a long moment. She was not a threat to your family, Tenna said. She was trying to heal something. Yes, Jae-won said. And Lim had her killed because he thought she was building a weapon. He misread everything, Jae-won said. For 11 years he has been protecting himself from a war that was never coming. Soo-yeon was not going to use the evidence publicly. She was going to bring it to him. And he stopped. Tenna reached across the table and put her hand over his. Not dramatically, just placed it there, steady and present. He looked at it for a moment. Then he said, I need to get the evidence to Lim himself.
Directly.
Not through intermediaries, not through the law, not through any channel he can block. I need to put it in front of him and tell him what Soo-yeon was actually trying to do. Because if Lim understands, if he truly understands that she was not his enemy, then he has no reason to continue any of this. The only thing keeping him moving is fear of exposure. And if he does not believe you? Tenna said. Then we are in a different story, Jae-won said quietly. But I believe he will. He is not a man who wanted to do what he did. He is a man who was afraid for a very long time and made irreversible decisions from that fear. The evidence does not need to be a weapon. It was always meant to be, a door. Tenna looked at him. Then let's open it, she said. The meeting with Lim Dongcheol took 4 days to arrange. Not because it was difficult. Lim, when contacted through a channel that made clear what was being offered, responded within 6 hours. The 4 days were logistics, a neutral location, no staff on either side, conditions that Lim himself specified with the precision of a man who had been careful for a very long time and was not going to stop now. They met in a rented room above a tea house in a part of the city that was old and quiet and had no association with either family. Jae-won went alone. He had argued with Chun Seo about this for 2 hours. Chun Seo had argued back with every weapon in his 11-year arsenal of reasoning. Jae-won had listened to all of it and still gone alone. Because Soo-yeon had been trying to do something private. Something human. Arriving with security would have made it a confrontation. What it needed to be was a conversation. Lim Dongcheol was smaller than Jae-won had expected. 71 years old, with the careful movements of a man whose body was no longer interested in excess energy expenditure. His face was not cruel. It was tired, deeply, structurally tired, the way a face gets when it has been holding something for too long. They sat across from each other. Jae-won placed the notebook and a copy of the drive on the table between them. My wife compiled this, he said. She spent the last months of her life on it. I want you to read what she wrote in the final pages. About what she intended to do with it. Lim looked at the notebook for a long time, without touching it. Then, slowly, he picked it up. The tea house was quiet around them. Lim read for a long time. He did not speak. His face was the face of a man encountering something he had prepared for in every form except the actual one. When he set the notebook down, his hands were very still. She was going to bring it to me, he said. Not a question. Yes, Jae-won said. She was not going to. No, Jae-won said. She was going to give you the truth. That is all she wanted. For you to have it. A long silence. My son, Lim said, and his voice, for the first time, was not the voice of a strategist or a patient enemy or a man who had survived by being careful. It was just the voice of an old man. My son was with her in the organization before things changed. He trusted her. He told me she was not what I thought she was. He stopped. I did not listen. Jae-won said nothing. I was afraid, Lim said. For so long. And when you are afraid that long, you stop being able to tell the difference between a threat and he stopped again. He looked at the notebook. A woman who was trying to give you your life back. The tea house held them in its old, quiet way. Shin will be withdrawn, Lim said at last. All of it. The interference, the pressure, the people I had watching. It ends today. He did not apologize for Soo-yeon. Jae-won had not expected him to. There was no sentence in any language that could carry that weight without breaking. But Lim looked at him across the table with a full comprehension of what he had done, and did not look away. That was something. Maybe it was everything. 2 weeks later, the Harem Ensemble's administrative review concluded. Tenna received the new email on a Thursday afternoon, standing at the counter of the Gilded Crane, between the bread basket and table 4. We are pleased to reinstate your audition invitation. She read it twice. Then she put her phone in her apron pocket and finished refilling the bread basket and brought it to table 4 and said, Can I get you anything else? And when they said no, she went to the kitchen, stood by the counter, and let herself feel it. All of it. The 14 months and the 2 years and the keyboard in the corner, and the mother who called every Sunday and the piece that had taken so long to find its ending. She was going to play her music in front of real people. Whether they chose it or not, it was going to exist. Outside of her apartment, outside of her own head, outside of the private world she had been building it in. It was going to be heard. That was the something else. That was what she had come here for. The audition was on a Saturday. Rui was very formal about it. He arrived that morning wearing his most serious expression and carrying a small folded paper, which he presented to Tenna at the door. "What is this?" she said. "A note," he said. "I wrote it myself. You can read it after." She put it in her pocket. At the audition, she played the full piece. The room held 5 members of the ensemble selection committee, 2 staff, and a consultant. They sat in the formal way of people who have heard many things and learn not to react in the moment. She played for 11 minutes. The final section, the ending she had written at 2 in the morning, the one that said "I am still here," landed exactly as it had in her apartment. Not triumphant, not resolved.
Clear.
Present. When she finished, there was a pause. Then the director said, "Tell us about the compositional process." She told them. She told them about the rest notes. About silence not being empty, but being where the music rests. About a mother who calls every Sunday and sings for 30 years in a green dress in a field far away. About the 14 months of reaching toward an ending that was not ready until she was. She did not tell them about the harp, or the boy, or the man with the still eyes. Some things are the music underneath, not the music you play out loud. They thanked her. She left. She was sitting on the steps outside the audition hall when her phone rang.
J1.
"How did it go?" he said. "I don't know yet," she said. "I played it. They listened. That part is done." "Good," he said. "That is the only part you're responsible for." "I know," she said. And then, Rui gave me a note. "I know," J1 said. "He worked on it for 3 days. He would not let me read it." Tenna took the note from her pocket and unfolded it. It said, in Rui's careful, slightly lopsided handwriting, "Dear Tenna, you stop when I talk to you. You listen to the harp even when nobody asked you to. You're the rest note kind of brave. That is the most brave. Rui K., age 6 3/4, almost 7. Tenna sat on the steps of the audition hall and looked at the note for a very long time. "What does it say?" J1 asked. "The truth," she said. A pause.
Tenna, he said.
The way he said her name now was different from the first time. It had weight in it, comfortable weight, the kind that comes when a name has been said enough times in enough significant moments that it stops being just a word. "Yes," she said. "Rui wants to know if, when this is done, when everything is settled, if you would come to Suwon. Not for any official reason. Just to see where the harp is from. Where my mother is from." A pause. "Where I am from." She looked at the city around her, the buildings, the people, the ordinary afternoon light on the ordinary streets of a city that had been harder on her than she had expected and had, in the past few months, also given her more than she had planned for. "Tell Rui yes," she said. "And me," he said. She smiled. "Tell yourself yes," she said. 3 weeks later, the Harem Ensemble offered Tenna Warren a slot in the Spring New Works program. Her piece would be performed live, recorded, and archived in the ensemble's permanent library. Her name would be on it. She was here. She had made this. She called her mother. Her mother sang. 6 months after a 6-year-old boy walked up to a stranger and offered her a crown she never asked for, Tenna Warren, Kim Jae-won, and Kim Rui stood in the city of Suwon in early autumn. The house was not large, for what it represented, a 3-story building in a neighborhood that had been the same neighborhood for 100 years, with a garden that was extremely well tended and a door that was dark red. Inside, in the main room, another ancient harp stood against the wall. Rui walked straight to it. He put his hand out. He looked at Tenna. "Should I say hello?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He plucked one string. The sound rang through the old room. Clear, warm, aching. It was answered by the silence around it, which was not empty. It never was. Jae-won stood beside Tenna and did not reach for her hand, and she did not reach for his. But they stood close, in the way of 2 people who have stood through enough together that proximity has become its own language, and the next part of the story was not a question anymore but a direction. Not yet arrived, but real. Already, unmistakably real. The rest note before the next thing is always the most important part. Hold on to this story because every chapter they live will be worth hearing. This story found you because you were ready for it. Be the first to hear what comes next by subscribing now, so the next chapter arrives exactly when it should. Leave this page knowing that somewhere, a 6-year-old boy with serious eyes and a harp is still asking the right questions, and the bravest answer anyone ever gave him was simply, yes. You showed up for this story the same way Tenna showed up for Rue, completely without being asked, and that kind of heart deserves every story that comes next.